with newsmen in Abuja, the nation's capital. The minister also noted that a committee is working out a new template for upward consequential adjustment for those already earning above 30,000 naira. And he said, and I quote, "It is a national law and no governor can say he will not pay." The national minimum wage is item 34 on the exclusive legislative list of the third schedule of the 1999 Constitution, as amended. And in other reports now, the People's Democratic Party on Sunday charged the National Assembly and security agencies to immediately probe corrupt allegations by the wife of the president, Aisha Buhari, against the Social Investment Program, that's the SIP. The wife of the president, who mentioned the conditional cash transfer components, questioned the method used in executing the program. She also faulted the $16 million supposedly spent on the purchase of mosquito nets. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party on Sunday charged the National Assembly as well as security agencies to immediately probe corrupt allegations by the wife of the president against the Social Investment Program. In a statement by its National Public Secretary, Kola Ologbondiyan, the party said, and I quote, "The revelation by the First Lady Aisha Buhari that there is humongous fraud in the 500 billion naira social investment program and the $16 billion mosquito net project of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration has further vindicated its stance that APC government is deceitful and a pretentious citadel of corruption," end of quote. The PDP, however, called on the National Assembly and all anti-corruption agencies to commence forensic investigation into how these funds were dispensed and utilized. In Zamfara State, the state governor Abdulaziz Yari has also said his All Progressives Congress party lost the battle for the state because that was what God willed. In a statement by the governor's media advisor Ibrahim Dosara, Yari also said that he and the party had accepted the verdict of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on Friday ruled that APC had no candidate for all elections in the state as there was no proper primary elections. The Apex Court directed the Electoral Commission, INEC, to issue certificates of return to candidates who came second in the polls, and candidates of the opposition, that's the People's Democratic Party, benefited from the ruling. And in other reports from the PDP, now in Kogi State, it has also warned against releasing the balance of 30 billion naira bailout to the state government under the leadership of Governor Yahaya Bello. The party claimed it had gathered that Governor Bello and the Commissioner of Finance had intensified efforts in lobbying the federal government to secure the release of the balance of the bailout. The PDP, in a statement released on Sunday, which was signed by the State Publicity Secretary, Bode Ogunmola, said that there is the need to probe into the utilization of the past funds so far released to the governor. The party noted that the state is hugely indebted and is owing workers' salaries for upward of 38 months after it has taken several loans from banks without any development to show for it. The PDP asked the CBN to pay Kogi workers directly, stating that any attempt to release the balance of bailout to Governor Bello would amount to giving him his payoff. Today now marks Children's Day, and in activities commemorating the day, the United Nations Children's Fund, that's UNICEF, on Sunday said, in spite of advances made over the last years, Nigerian children still lack access to health, nutrition, education and other basic rights. UNICEF's new country representative in Nigeria, Peter Hawkins, who stated this in a message to commemorate the 2019 Nigerian Children's Day, noted that more children now live in healthy lives, learn in schools and also have a voice in their communities than ever before. Hawkins pointed out that the most disadvantaged children in the country suffered the greatest challenge in fulfillment of their rights, adding that child rights would only be fully realized when every government and every citizen are aware of and also uphold children's rights, and every child could claim those rights. He added that as part of the celebrations, UNICEF has launched Passport to Your Rights, a copy of the CRC in child-friendly languages and in pocket format to ensure that every Nigerian child has a copy by 2030, being the deadline for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. Well, joining us now live in our Lagos studio, we have Oyinlola Scott Igbene. That's the Acting Chief Executive Secretary of the OVL Foundation. Good to have you join us, and happy Children's Day.
Thank you.
I love the smile on your face. So now, today we're marking Children's Day, and interestingly, the President has also signed the budget for 2019, but sadly, we only see the peg for education, budgetary allocation for education, just at about 7%. This is low compared to the 605.8 billion naira in 2018 and 398 billion naira in 2017. It is an upward review, but we are still below the threshold of UNESCO. What do you make of this?
First of all, I think that we do not pay enough attention to education as a nation because of the insurgencies and the crisis that we have around the nation. It has become a thought that perhaps if you invest less on education and more on the insurgencies, and then, you are doing people a favor. People forget that children are the leaders of tomorrow. The amount of money that is invested in proper education for children will determine the kind of future that the nation has. So even though there's an upward review, you also have to put into consideration the inflation rates. How much value really is this money in real term compared to what it was in the previous years? It's about the same thing. And the state of education is really deteriorating. So more needs to be put into ensuring that education, the standard of education, is greatly improved in the nation.
And talking about the standard of education in Nigeria, if you looked at today's dailies as well, you saw pictures of schools in a very poor, appalling state, and you ask yourself, where is all the money so far? And that's why there's the probe into the governor of Delta State, as well as the utilization of the funds so far, and to what extent this has been used between 2015 and now. But now we have local governments who are given the authority, have the mandate to construct and also maintain schools across the country. And that has not really been done. In the last 4 years, we've not seen any new schools being built in Nigeria. Do you think we have a sense of understanding of how much of an impact this would have, and how do we correct this, especially talking about access of funds going to the local government as well, UBEC funds?
We don't understand. The people who are in charge of the funds do not understand. At the foundation where I work, we work very closely with communities and with children. And on one of our visits to a Folu community in Ibejuleki, we found that the only school that they have was built by a pastor because the closest school to them was about 15 to 20 kilometers away, and then the children had to walk to school every day. So people weren't going to school. Schools are not being built, and then the schools that are being built are not being refurbished, because I was speaking to some young people earlier on today, and I heard stories. Someone said to me, I went to primary school, taking a nylon in my hand, and then when I get to class, I spread the nylon on the floor, and that's where I sit. The condition has not improved. According to UNICEF, in Nigeria, over 83% of our schools, of our public schools, don't have wash facilities. So there are no toilets, there are no water systems, you don't have boreholes, you don't have... The condition is not conducive for learning. So the money that is supposed to be invested in education,
talking about this UBEC fund now, as of December, was 142.6 billion naira. To a large extent, that would have treated some of these issues that you've raised. But now, we also look at recent survey as well, showing the population of out-of-school children in Nigeria, and the current peg is at about 13.2 million children. That's just the official records that we have. And along the West African region, you find Nigeria comprising of 45% of the population of out-of-school children. The numbers are growing this time around and not even showing any signs of reducing. So how then do we now correct or navigate away from this current narrative where we have children not in school?
One of the reasons why children are not in school, I think that the fundamental reason why children are not in school is poverty. Their parents cannot afford to pay the levies, even at the public school level. They can't afford to pay the levies, they can't buy them uniforms. Sometimes they can't even afford the nylon bags to put on the floor. And then in some secondary schools, you have to take your seats to school. So if your parents can't, build you a table and a chair, then there's no
So
need
what's
to
your
go
word
to
to
school.
Mr. President now and the Minister of Education and all other key stakeholders as the mandate is once
Be passionate to make sure that you implement programs and you
asking the Federal High Court to compel Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of the Education